All right, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Friday, March 10th, if I remember correctly, the way this is going to go up. We're into March, we're full into March. We're in the final month of the quarter. Weather's changing. We've had a bunch of snow in Denver and some wild weather across the Midwest. But today we are so excited. We have Robert Wagner with us. Robert is just an amazing agent. He's also become a friend of ours. Sometimes counselor, right, Rob? But high level, Rob's got 25 years, in the business. He's been a realtor, he's been a manager, he's done new construction. He was just sharing with us a few minutes ago a little bit about basketball in college, and he also has some ecological type interest, as well. So, Rob, welcome into our Fun Fact Friday fireside chat video.
Fireside chat. How perfect for March 1st.
Yeah. March 1st. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and what's happening with you in your life.
Well, thank you, Michael and Andrew. I'm just pleased to be on this quick little presentation. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, was raised there and went to school in the Midwest. Came out to Colorado in the late 60s and was a teacher and a basketball coach for 5 years before I entered the sporting goods industry and had a wonderful career for 25 years in that industry with clothing, hard goods, and all kinds of things. A lot of selling parallels that equate to our real estate industry quite nicely, great overlays. And then entered the real estate industry at the late 90s. So I can officially say I've been selling in 2 millenniums in the 20th and 21st century. So I've had a wealth of experience in some wonderful venues, wonderful companies, and mostly wonderful people. And it is the most rewarding industry that I've experienced. And you get back what you put into it almost 100%. And maybe we can talk to that a little bit later. So that's my background.
Oh,
Love it. Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, great. So, it sounds like you've had, you're bringing a wealth of experience from, the sales world, obviously, as well as real estate, and kind of, wore quite a few different hats in your career here, Rob. So, so I appreciate the overlay. So what made you make this transition, right? So you started off, you're coming out of hooping in college, you kind of get into coaching and teaching, which makes sense. I had a little of that too, then you get into the sales world, and then once you're ready kind of with that, you've made some success there, now ready to transition to real estate. So what caused you to kind of make this transition from working in the sporting goods industry to, now selling real estate for the last, 20 some odd years? So
that's a great question, Andrew, and it will probably come across most people as they are entering our business from others. Mine happened to be a return on investment of time and energy. Towards the end of my sales career in clothing and the sporting goods industry, that too is a commission-based business, predicated 100% on bookings, sometimes a year out, most likely 6 months out. And so when you wrote orders, you were relying 100% on deliveries, be they from foreign sourcing, the Caribbean, or domestically. There was a phase of that experience where the so-called licensed sportswear business came into existence. I was involved with that from the very beginning in the late 80s. And it was a rocket dealing with NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, and last of all, the NFL. Everyone jumped aboard that. Walmart, major retailers, mom and pop shops, to say the least. It was a soaring quick rocket, and greed entered the business, mostly from people that provided those licenses. And so the point is that you would work a full year, you'd work sometimes 6 months, and maybe see as little as 35% of your return. And so that repeated itself a great deal. And so by the end of the 90s, I said, I'm going to get into something that I know I can control my own destiny. And that is the beauty of real estate. Not only is real estate a living organism, it's something you can really control for the most part. And so that's what I've loved about it, with all the things I've done, from being on site in major high-end communities, to helping brokers grow their business, managing brokers, and most of all, serving the public in a very honorable way, both from buyer and seller standpoint. So my answer to that is, this is a business that will feed you back for the energy you put into it. Day in, day out, doesn't matter the year, it will feed you respectfully.
Wow, that's fantastic. We talk a lot, Angie and I talk a lot about what you put into it and touching your business on a regular basis, right? And having a framework and a plan and working that plan. Are there things, Rob, today that are daily today that are different than they were, 20, 25 years ago?
I would say, Michael, what is different is certainly the very positive effect that social media can have on both the brokerage and also the public. And when used properly, it's such a great add-on to what we've always done traditionally as one-to-one relationships. This extends relationships dramatically in a way that I'm still learning to respect. But for younger brokers that are coming into the business, it is such a great tool to learn how to embrace the tools that will work for an individual. Not everything is for everybody. It's the same thing. You make a selection, what works for you to your plan, you embrace it, you engage it, and you stay with it. It's not something that's a 30-day cycle. It's something that becomes part of an annual business plan. So my answer to that, Michael, is great in years past when relationships were 100% of that, hardcore, solid concrete offices. You did closings at title companies at their location. But I would say that the tools that brokers have today are just amazing. And that speaks well to our company of Windermere.
That's great. Yeah. And the tools are definitely something we always try to grow and expand on. Right. But it definitely seems, like, and I've heard you say this before, while the tools have changed, the job has largely stayed the same. Right. So I do want to hear a little bit because you definitely have had success for a long time. So if you had to kind of give some of our newer agents or maybe some of our agents trying to make sure that they have a multiple decade career here, is there something you can point to as like, as something they need to make sure they're doing or make sure they're holding themselves accountable for, to themselves, to their brokerage, to their clients, to the public at large,
Wonderful, Andrew. And one of the great things of our company is that we do very intentional planning. And so, as I spoke earlier, your planning is done not only out of your own mind, but it's also done with some tutelage, meaning some great guidance from the management, Andrew, yourself, and Michael. So once that's set in place, is what we normally do in November and December. Everyone's gone through that. It's a plan that is put into place. If you follow it, you certainly make adjustments, as we do with everything we do in open sales, but you stay with the basic plan. If you go off of it too much and stray and you start getting drawn to processes that may not affect your particular business path, that's where you can get in trouble. You can't abandon what you laid down for yourself weeks, months prior to what you're doing right now. We're at a perfect example right now, Andrew. It's March 1st. So we've had a setup now for 2 months. It's a great time for everybody to look at what they've experienced for the 2 months. Make some adjustments and go ahead, but don't abandon the plan. The structure, your plan is your boss. It's that simple. Your structure, your plan is your boss, which starts with a daily routine. So if you stay with that, things come out of the universe that you don't see. When you're honest and honorable to your plan, the work will serve you. What you put in the universe will come back and serve you at a time where you cannot necessarily plan for it. That's the value of staying to a plan.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is basically, do what you say you're going to do. Right. So we built this plan together, and I've asked this of a couple of the people. Has any, you've been with us for several years now. been through business planning several times. Has that plan ever been prescribed to you, or do you feel like it was something that you were able to, work together and come up with largely on your own?
It's a plan, Andrew, that
Mhm.
remnants of which I've seen before, facets of which I've seen before, which speaks well to the industry. It's just not one brand that has it all down pat.
Sure.
It's an industry-wide notion that if you have a good plan, you will be successful. It's that simple. And so you could take all the brands that we know about, whether they're luxury, whether they're pyramid type brands, whether they're iBuyer type brands, they all have plans. They all have elements of what we have with our plan, which is really, really good. And so it's just proven to the industry that if you follow a plan, you'll do good work.
I also think too, Rob, with all of that, at the end of the day, it's also about connection in our relationship with our sphere and our clients, right? And how we can serve them, right, in a way, as I'm sure today, it may be very different than it was even 2 years ago, right? As the market adjusts and shifts. And we've often said, we don't set the market, we sell the market, right? And provide good guidance and good leadership and good strategy to our clients. And Andrew and I talk about that all the time. It's about helping people be able to go left, right, or center.
Correct, Michael, and that's not going to ever change. We're coming out of a climate of post-COVID. We're into the third week of this month, as a matter of fact. That'll be the 3-year anniversary. It has changed our basic look of how the industry is conducted. There have been segments of it from brokerage standpoints that are already starting to fade because they're not relational. There are segments that are needing shoring up again, which creates opportunity for our young people. Relationship, one-to-one relationship and engagement is so critical right now, and it's somewhat off the chart. It's off the board from how success took place in 2021 and 22. We're creating a new canvas of relationship and engagement. And so it's really imperative that our young people, or anyone it's in this game, understands that relationships are still the keystone to this business. How we engage our database is so critical, and everyone's going to be a little bit different, but there are processes that are proven as to how and when you do that.
I love it, and I think we all agree on this call and largely in our team that relationships are the cornerstone to how we are going to move forward and have success. But I'm sure there are some things that maybe, to your point, I think I've heard you say this plenty of times, like I said, like the job is largely the same over the last 25 years, but I'm sure your plan has adjusted. So what does your plan look like today? And how is that different, or how is that similar to what your plan looked like maybe in year 1 to 5 when you were kind of just getting cranking through versus now when you were, I'm sure it's a different plan today than it was 20 years ago.
In the early years, Andrew, my early success was just strictly as a broker associate with a boutique company in Greenwood Village that's no longer in existence. It was largely created by open houses.
Okay.
That was an era where open houses were everything. Saturdays and Sundays were the predictable days, sometimes Wednesdays, sometimes Friday afternoons, but that was the major linchpin to success. The MLS and RE Colorado and all the search engines were out of a Sears catalog. Every Monday morning, the new MLS would come in about a 4-inch binder, and I thought, gosh, there goes half of Washington. Another binder has shown up with all the newest listings, which will be out of date in another week. So open houses were big. We didn't have a lot of great database platforms then. I mean, computers were just really coming into their own about how to engage the public. It was largely you're writing it down and keeping a little journal. Here's so-and-so, they look like they might be wanting to buy a house. Here's so-and-so that I know quite well that is going to sell their house. So it was, it seems like it was very ancient in the way things were done then. That's the beauty of where we are now, because there's so many things you can add beyond just open houses. The engagements we have with our platform and the social media, Facebook, where it comes into play, my gosh, the snail mail that we have out is just terrific, and it still works for a high demographic. In fact, that's a surprise because younger people are loving to see mail because they have 4.5 or 5 hours of screen time every day. So there's so many tools from which to choose to make you successful. I'm not sure I answered that, but for me, early on, Andrew, it was all relational, meet people at open houses and do some serious door knocking. And a lot of, I didn't add, but we did have a lot of gatherings that were company related for various things.
Yeah, no, I think you did answer it. And that did make me think of one more question. Sorry, Michael. You know, and just because, you know, open houses still occur today, you know, but even when I got in the industry 6 or 7 years ago now, they were, you know, I feel like less common. I don't know if that's how the public really interacts with real estate anymore, you know, and to your point, we don't longer, you know, us as realtors or licensees, depending on who you are listening out there, don't really have the opportunity to gatekeep the information in the same way that maybe we had before, you know, the internet became so prevalent for people advertising their houses. So how do you feel like that's adjusted? Is that like, while it may have made our job maybe a little more difficult in certain ways, but easier in others, is that an overall good thing the public has access to so much data now? Can that get confusing for them? You know, how do you handle as a professional now that it's not, you know, you're not getting a book of listings anymore? It's basically, we get the information roughly the same time the public does, right? When it gets listed on the MLS, it's largely on Redfin and Zillow and Windermere.com and wherever else you may be shopping.
Well, again, a great question, Andrew. And the public is deluged with input from many, many brokers. If we just look at what we can do as one single agent to disseminate information about a listing, great information that comes out of our office in Seattle, you have to know that the public is getting that from many, many other brokers as well. It ends up that there is a major deluge through social media networks. There can be overkill there. And I think there is a layer of engagement. There's engagement, there's effective solicitation, and then there does probably get to be a point of saturation to where people just tune out. My point is, when you have an open house or you have some limited invitation to an event for the public, it's refreshment. It can be refreshment. Someone, I want to go see that house. I want to get out of, I'm not going to stay in front of my computer over the weekend. I can do that Monday through Friday. I can see all that. I would love to go to that broker's open house. And I think it's a better opportunity now than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think, you know, and I think largely what I'm hearing is it really comes for a circle back to relationship, right? Because I mean, what I can't remember, I think the number adjusts slightly every year, but every individual person in America knows between like 14 and 15 realtors ish, is I think kind of the last time I looked at it. So it really does come down, in my opinion, even today, to your point, to the connection we're able to forge with our sphere and how we're able to kind of build relationships with them. And I think it's really great. I think the public has a lot of information now. They're really informed. They can make, you know, they can gather information and forge relationships and make a discerning choice to work with Rob Wagner versus being forced to work with a guy, you know, whose sign was in their neighbor's yard because that's who works their neighborhood, right? So I think there's a really good opportunity for the public to be selective with who they work with, and for us to be able to, you know, elevate ourselves above other competition by being knowledgeable and forming genuine relationships with our sphere. So sorry if I, you know, I that's what I was hearing anyway. So yeah.
Well, that's great, Andrew. And that's a wonderful overlay to what I just tried to portray there. And it's we won't try to knock that around too much more, but I just open houses are really good in selected type public gatherings, you know, just like we had with our chief economist up in Fort Collins. You could see how the public really embraced that from the brokers that invited people from the Fort Collins offices. There are 300 people in that room wanting to get out and know some things beyond what their daily feed provides them. Let's get out there and feel it. Let's go see an expert. And so people are hungry again for one-to-one physical relationship.
Definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think too, it's interesting. We're talking about that knowledge and being able to dissect information. And I've always felt that a person didn't necessarily need a realtor to put a sign in their yard. They didn't need a realtor to go drive around, find their neighborhoods, right? They really need us contract to close. And they need us, and not only our experience, but our resources and helping them with their due diligence, right? So they make really great informed decisions. One of the things that we've seen in recent years is with the increase of maybe the agent population, right? We've also seen many, many different styles of brokerages out there. One of the things that we're seeing out there is just a lot of misinformation in some cases. And one of the things that I think has been really important is to know that area that you're working, right? Or know that segment of the market. And so, for example, if it's downtown condos, that is a very different environment specifically to maybe suburban homes in Parker, right? Just all the little indices and things like that, right? And really having that full knowledge. One of the things that I think is interesting, and we've had some recent conversations with some other people, they get a real estate license that allows them to sell anywhere in the state, technically. But the reality of it is, it comes down to what I've always called geographic competency, right? And we struggle with that sometimes with our clients, right? So they're in Metro Denver, but now they want to expand, they want to live in the mountains. They don't want to live in Denver. Well, that's a whole different geography, right? Same in Colorado Springs as it is in Fort Collins. What have you found the best way to navigate that, number one, whether it's locally or globally? And then number two is just from a best practices standpoint, what have you found to be best practices?
I'm really glad you brought that up, Michael. We can start with a macro picture of what is Denver, 11 counties, not including Boulder. If someone were to come in today as a buyer from, let's say, Kansas City, and they wanted to look at all of Denver, and they have a price range in mind as to what they want to do, and they want good schools for their children, and we do a nice survey with them and find out what they want. You have to have a macro picture of basically what all the counties are. And so when we are specializing, if we're trained properly and we specialize in neighborhoods, which is what I do at this stage of my career, I literally walk them. And it's a discipline that really has served me well. It's again, it's not an old-fashioned notion, it's just something that works. And here's why I say that. Through all the platforms that we know that so-and-so has valued your house at a certain number, and you look at it and you think, holy cow, that's just terrific. But that's the most expensive home in the neighborhood. It's not the home next door or the home next door behind you or whatever. The things that are algorithmically produced right now are still misleading. Until you know a neighborhood that you empower yourself by walking it. And I'm just going to say this is amazing timing. I walked a neighborhood yesterday in lieu of starting a new farm area. And in a 2-block radius, there were 9 different types of duplexes and townhomes. And I'm stopping in front of them and saying, wow, if someone came through as an assessor or an appraiser and said, well, yours next door appraised for, 20,000 less, 20,000 more. There were homes that are clearly $500,000 or $600,000 apart right next to each other. So until you know that, until you see it firsthand and you're walking with somebody, you're kind of shooting in the dark. And so I'm a huge believer in really knowing a neighborhood. That holds true for builder communities. You need to know and our brokers are being taught that they need to go out to master plan communities. And so you cannot have too much personal on-hand knowledge. It's great practice on maybe 2-3 times a week to go do this, particularly in the areas where you're becoming better known. And it's only strengthens you when something comes up and you can speak with confidence and not from a script about a certainty.
Yeah, so this made me think of something. And I'm going to ask you guys both this question because it's going to maybe a little unfair because I'm going to ask you to kind of give a prediction to a certain extent. Both of you worked through kind of the the transaction we saw from like 2008 to when we really rebounded here in Colorado in like 10, 11, 12, right in there. And now, while we had nowhere near that kind of a bounce of the last couple, of last year, but we did see homes, in 2022 selling for a little bit less or staying in the market a little bit longer. As professionals, do you have any concerns for appraised values here in the first couple second quarter of the year, when we're starting to see more engagement, high, offers over asking, multiple offer situations? Could there be a disparity there as appraisers look back to, middle end of last year and they're saying, oh man, this house that sold for, 600 last year is now selling for 670? Did they make that jump? So I have some, just kind of keep my eye. That's like kind of been a buzz in the back of my head. So I don't know if I'm misplaced there. What you guys think?
Well, that's a great question. So I'll give you a couple of thoughts. The first one is, I have concerns for some who were willing to pay over an appraised amount, regardless of the appraisal. Because the appraisal is there to protect us. It's also, when there's a bank involved, it's not the buyer's money, it's the bank's money at the end of the day. The difference now is, I think what we're going to see, or what we're seeing and going to see, is this leveling. Probably less transactions, but a higher dollar amount. The difference is that in order to make a significant price adjustment, when you look at what we call the 1004 MC report, which I call the appraiser's report, it's a report that we run in our MLS. Appraisers look at that on 90-day chunks over 12 months. It's called an increasing market or a decreasing market. So those of you that have sat through business planning with me know that, and say you could have an increasing market and then a 90 days of decreasing and then right back. I just call that seasonality. The bigger issue I think we're going to face now is limited inventory. I think people in the last 24 to 36 months made their decision to either move to Colorado or move out of Colorado or move within Colorado, whatever that looks like. I think some have a very incredible interest rate. So the prospect for some may or may not make sense to move. And we have to recognize that. Is it, I just want to move, or is it something has happened and we're here to serve, right? So people that get married, they get divorced, they grow their families, things happen, right? Jobs happen all the time. So we just need to be able to provide that data to people in a manner to where, again, they can go left, right, or center. So like you said about multiple offers, here's what the data tells us. Here's where we're comfortable. Here's where we can get you out of the house if we need to, but those decisions are yours. I provide, you decide. I think we've done our job if we've done that. The things we can't control are things like the interest rates, right? What we can control is how we navigate the market and guide our clients, if that makes sense. And I think I answered both of your questions.
I think so. Yeah. And that's kind of made me, Rob, made me think of that, because he was speaking about appraisals and he was speaking about knowledge. And what I basically heard from Rob is, from his 25 years experience here, is price the damn home right. Like if you know the area and you price the home right, you're probably going to be okay. It's kind of what I heard from both of you guys. So, yeah.
Let me add on to that, Michael's great comments, Andrew, a little bit. So March 1st, 2023. One of the things I do every year in my profile and biography is change up a message on our website. And the message I have this year is that we are not in a recession. And in the words of Matthew Gardner, we are in a reversion or a reset. And so I am looking forward to engaging the public from both the buy and the sell side to have that conversation. We've gone through a 12-month period that's unprecedented in the 25 years I've been in the business. I mean, unbelievably torpedo equity, first and second quarters in 2022, to Michael's point. We may never see that again. And so the reset, the reversion is a great point of conversation with people. And again, it's back to my strong pull on relationship, to have that conversation So you create reality for both a buyer and a seller. Denver's fortunate. We've had like a 4.5% reversion reset. That's an easy conversation as to how that measures with somebody if they're paying cash or if they're looking for a loan. I had that conversation with a couple of people and they said, oh, geez, we thought it was like 10 or 12%. And so they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a chance to get it set correctly. So on Michael's good comments, it's there is a reversion, not a recession.
The other thing that to think about too is when we were going through the recession, a homeowner was in a bad spot. In most cases, when we went to closing, there was no money for commissions. The bank was losing money. That's why it was called a short sale, right? It was sold short. But the banks were making the decisions by committee once every 6 to 8 weeks by the dozens and dozens and dozens. So you would submit an offer and it would sometimes be 6 to 8 weeks for you to even hear back. Then you got to schedule inspections and deal with all that. So the sales cycle was so long that in the meantime, if another home came on the market, maybe it wasn't a short sale. Those were going because if you're my buyer and Rob's buyer, why are we going to wait? And so that short sale home goes back on the market, right? So we hear stories about homes being on the market for 18 months or 24 months. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while, the person's in the house not making a payment. So, the system was broken. I think today, and they are out there, we recently had one up north. One of our agents had one. I think today, if a person finds himself in that position, the bank is going to give you a number right out of the gate. Sell it for this, it's done. We'll take it. There's no committee, no nothing. It's already, I think there's a baked in formula. So we could then market it and say, this is a short sale and future foreclosure. This is the number, not $1 less. So it saves time. People that are looking, I think the banks got smarter. I think if we ever found ourselves, I don't think we will because there's so much equity in the transactions. But if we ever did, it would be a very different conversation.
Yeah, and I do think I feel like kind of piggybacking off what you guys are saying. I think it's really easy to kind of our earlier part of our conversation with all this data we have access to and being able to kind of make predictions and make market analyses, which are really important, and they are important for the public to know. They're important for us to know. But I think it gets really easy to kind of lump every single house into this large batch of data. But to Rob's point, 1-2-3-4 Main Street needs an opinion and an evaluation for 1-2-3-4 Main Street. They can't just lump it into everything that's nearby because the house across the street and the house next door might have different situations, right? So one thing I'm really proud of our team, the three of us and everyone else on our team included, is we do our best to make sure that we're informing not only the public of where they're at, but our individual clients or individual spheres and relationships where their individual situation, so they can make the best decision for themselves. Right. So short sales happen, man, in Colorado, largely, largely there's people out there that's not your fault necessarily, but you can probably avoid it with some keeping your eye on the market and planning ahead, but sometimes it's the right move. Right. And so the more we can inform someone, because someone who bought a house in 2022 might need to hold on to that for a couple extra years in order to turn a profit in 2024 or 2025. And the person who bought the house next door might be able to sell it in 12 to 18 months and make money, right? It's all about each individual situation. And I think that one thing we try to do in our team is really empower our agents with data, with tools, and with confidence and skill sets to be able to go out there and speak to their clients about their individual issue. And I think it's too easy when people are, to your point, Rob, relying on any of these large companies out there that do a good thing in putting public data out there. But we all know those estimates aren't always reflective of that individual situation. And then even if the number's right, that doesn't mean that person's situations dictates they should sell or should sit on it or should buy. We have to collaborate, right? We put our teams together. We work with lenders, title companies, and realtors and home warranties, all as one big team to deliver the best possible result to our clients. So I'm done, guys. Sorry.
That's great, Andrew.
Yeah.
And just one more thing, we can move on to something else if you wish. But That's why I said in the beginning that real estate's a living organism. If you just go back to the 15 years that Michael's just kind of talked about, I was involved with some major custom building in a beautiful area of Denver where we had 12 builders that went bankrupt in less than a month after they made career profits. That created the structures that Michael has just alluded to, that has created the era we have today. So we have history. It teaches us things to move on, to be good today. We have recent history from a year ago to say to people, this may never happen again. You may not have a 40% increase in your home in 1 year. We are back to normalcy, and we are talking about returning to a balanced market. Conversation points, talking opportunities. I just think it's rich right now for 2023.
Yeah, I do too. Well, Rob, so I tell you, honestly, I say this about on my heart. I mean, you've got the knowledge, you've got experience. You and I talk regularly. Your perspective sometimes is so valuable. I appreciate that. Are there something that you're really looking forward to for 23 and maybe 24, right? And then is there something that whether we could help you with as a brokerage or a company, or that we could be an influence on leadership from like a state level at CAR that would help you as a realtor?
I think since I'm in the a nice part of my career, and for me, I'm fortunate to be with a brand like Windermere, and I think our brand is still such an untold story that it makes it easy for me to attach to and talk the history of this company for 50 years, and to know that we're drawing off a history that is a proven brand. And for me, at where I am, it's an easy story as I engage new clients, buyers and sellers. Our company in Denver, and the way that Windermere Denver Metro office is broker centric. It's broker centric. There are many brands that they're not. There are listing companies that's all they care about. There are companies that are iBuyer top type companies. There are companies that are platform based companies. Windermere is broker centric. Attention to the brokers, their needs on a weekly basis. And so for me, it's an ideal situation to grow for the time I have remaining in this business. And I'm just quite fortunate to be here.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're wrapping up, the end of our time. Is there, do you want to wrap it up for us, or Andrew, you want to wrap it up? We'll let you choose.
Yeah, Rob, what do you want to leave us with here? You got, about as much experience as Michael and I combined. So I want to hear what you have to say to leave us going off here.
I will just say, and I've said quite a bit during this segment, but the day's the day. You have an opportunity every day. We are rich with opportunity every day, and it's just up to us to find it. Sometimes it's through a narrow patch of weeds. Sometimes it's just right there because we've been in the right spot at the right time. And but you have to be in the moment, in the real estate moment, to do that. And for each of us, no matter whether we're 25 or 60 or 70 or older, you've got to make a real estate move every day. And so that's my wish for everybody in our company, and actually for everyone that's engaged in this business. If you engage the business, it'll treat you beautifully.
Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much, Rob. Yeah. What's the best way for people to get connected with you? I know you mentioned you have some social media tags. Just make sure we're kind of getting everyone who wants to meet Rob Wagner hooked up with you.
Just strictly simply just my phone number, 720-272-8466. My email address is rob@windermere.com. And, the Facebook feeds that we have with the company, I can reach out that way as well.
Awesome.
I love it, Rob. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. Enjoy the Ides of March coming up here in a few days, boys. It's going to be eerie. Look out. Yeah.
I can see them coming right over the hedge. Here they come.
I know, right? Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Rob.
Hey, guys.
Thank you for the time.